So what if I told you that the most meticulously accurate retelling of forbidden, like, 2,000-year-old esoteric scripture
Mhm.
isn't happening in some dusty theology class,
Right.
but is actually disguised as a glossy popcorn police procedural set in Los Angeles?
It sounds completely absurd when you say it out
It
loud.
really does. I mean, you flip on your television, you catch 5 minutes of the show Lucifer, and you just see the devil in a tailored suit, driving a Corvette and helping a homicide detective solve crimes.
Yeah, standard issue urban fantasy.
Exactly. But when you actually look under the hood of the mythology this show builds over its 6 seasons,
Mhm.
you realize you are looking at an absolute masterclass in ancient cosmology.
Oh, absolutely. It genuinely functions as a Trojan horse.
Right.
Like, it presents this villain of the week buddy cop dynamic, but the architecture supporting that narrative is pulling directly from texts that were literally buried in the Egyptian desert for centuries.
Which is just wild.
Yeah.
And uncovering that hidden architecture is our mission for you today. We're going to unpack the hidden cosmology of Lucifer and determine just how deep its Gnostic roots really go. And to do this, we've pulled together this incredibly dense, fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive.
We really have.
We're looking at translated excerpts from the ancient Nag Hammadi library, specifically texts like the Hypostasis of the Archons and the Apocryphon of John.
Right, the heavy hitters.
Yeah. Plus Carl Jung's psychological deep dive answer to Job, some passages from the esoteric Urantia papers, and even transcripts from analytical YouTube essays.
Not to mention some really brilliant deep-cut community theories from the Gnostic and Lucifer subreddits.
That's quite the reading list.
It's a remarkable collection, honestly, because we're tracing a line from second-century heretical scriptures straight through to modern internet forums.
Yeah.
And they're all intersecting at this one piece of mainstream pop culture.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand the show's version of the devil, we first have to understand his parents.
Right, the cosmic family tree.
Exactly, because in this universe, that tree completely discards the traditional Sunday school narrative.
Yeah.
It maps almost perfectly onto ancient Gnostic deities, and the power dynamics are they're entirely different.
Yeah, we have to start with the entity the show simply calls Dad, right,
Okay.
who represents God.
Right.
But this guy is utterly obsessed with rules, with rigid obedience, and something he cryptically calls the plan.
Always the plan.
Always. And he operates from a distance, demanding compliance without ever really offering an explanation.
And then on the flip side, you have Mum.
Yes.
She is the goddess of creation. She's this vibrant, chaotic, intensely creative force who was literally cast out into hell by her own husband.
Which is a huge departure from orthodoxy.
Yeah, and she eventually escapes to Earth and, occupies the body of a high-powered defense attorney.
Which is such a fun TV trope, but that specific dynamic, the rigid authoritarian father and the exiled creative mother, that is the foundational core of Gnostic cosmology. If we look at the Nag Hammadi texts, Dad is not the ultimate infinite creator. He represents a figure known as the demiurge.
The demiurge.
Right. In these ancient scriptures, he's given names like Yaldabaoth, Samael, or Sakla. And those names translate to things like blind fool or ignorant child of chaos.
I mean, calling God a blind fool is quite the theological downgrade.
It really is.
How does a creator deity end up with that kind of reputation in these ancient texts?
Well, it comes down to the mechanics of how the Gnostics believed the material world was actually formed. In their cosmology, the true ultimate God is unknowable.
Okay.
It's this realm of pure spiritual light called the pleroma. And Mum represents an entity from this higher realm named Sophia, which translates to wisdom.
You, Sophia, right?
Yeah. Sophia is the divine feminine and the true creative spark. But according to the Apocryphon of John, Sophia attempted to create something on her own without her divine spiritual counterpart.
Ah, so she creates without the balancing force of spirit.
Precisely. And because she created using only her own isolated desire, the result was incomplete.
It was flawed.
Yeah, it was purely material, completely devoid of the higher spiritual light. And that flawed, dense creation was the demiurge.
Wow.
The texts describe him as a monstrous, ignorant entity who looked around at the dark material void he was born into and just assumed he was all that existed.
Because he couldn't see anything higher.
Exactly. He arrogantly proclaims, "I am God, there is no other but me." He demands absolute obedience from humanity because he doesn't actually understand where his own power came from.
So it's like Dad is a middle manager who hijacked the company's servers, locked everyone out, and genuinely believes he's the visionary CEO.
Ah, yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Meanwhile, Mum Sophia is the actual founder who made a massive coding error, got ousted by the board, and is now operating undercover in the lower departments, desperately trying to reclaim her tech and fix the glitch.
What's fascinating here is that the deep dives from the Lucifer Reddit community point out this dual creator dynamic isn't strictly limited to Gnosticism either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it actually taps into much older ancient Canaanite and Judaic mysticism.
Interesting.
Long before strict, solo monotheism became the absolute law, the early Semitic sky god was named El, and he ruled alongside a divine consort named Asherah.
Wait, Asherah?
Yeah. So the television show is effectively bypassing the solo, omnipotent God of later Orthodox Christianity entirely.
Wow.
It's pulling from a Bronze Age theological structure where the universe was managed and mismanaged by a primordial couple.
Which completely shifts how we have to look at the main character, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because if God is just an arrogant middle manager running a flawed material system and Mom is the exiled founder, where does their rebellious son actually fit into the hierarchy?
That's the big
The
question.
sources indicate that to figure that out, we have to completely redefine the name Lucifer.
We really do. We have to strip away centuries of cultural baggage and look at the actual linguistic history of the word itself.
Which is covered in those YouTube essays we looked at.
Exactly.
And this part blew my mind. The word Lucifer only appears exactly one time in the entire traditional Bible.
Just once.
Just once. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 12. And the original Hebrew text didn't even use the word Lucifer. It used the word Hilo.
Right. Which translates to the Shining One, or Son of the Morning.
So how did we get Lucifer?
Well, it wasn't until the 4th century that the name Lucifer entered the biblical lexicon at all. A scholar named Jerome was translating the Hebrew texts into Latin for the rapidly expanding Catholic Church.
Okay.
He needed a Latin equivalent for Hillel, so he used the word Lucifer, which literally translates to light bringer.
But, I mean, how does a title that literally means the one who brings the light become universally recognized as a synonym for pure, unadulterated evil?
You have to look at the socio-political mechanics of the 4th century. Jerome was working under a Roman Empire that was actively centralizing its power, standardizing its religion, and really defining what Orthodox Christianity would be.
Right, establishing the rules.
Exactly. If your entire power structure relies on a demiurge-like God who demands blind, unquestioning obedience, then the most dangerous thing in the world is someone who brings light.
Because light illuminates things.
Yes. Light represents illumination, independent thought, and the questioning of authority. To an empire demanding submission, the Lightbringer is the ultimate threat. So the title was slowly and deliberately weaponized.
But the sources point out an unbelievable plot twist hiding at the very end of the Bible.
Oh, this is the best part.
In the book of Revelation, chapter 22, verse 16, Jesus is speaking, and he refers to himself using a very specific phrase.
He calls himself the bright and morning star.
Which is the exact same cosmic title, the morning star, the light bringer.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes everything about how we view the protagonist of the show. Lucifer Morningstar is not the Prince of Lies.
Right.
He is playing the Gnostic archetype of the cosmic saboteur. Think of him as like a divine Prometheus.
Oh, stealing the fire.
Exactly. In Greek myth, Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give humanity the ability to build and think for themselves. And in the Urantia Papers, the Lucifer rebellion is reframed entirely.
It wasn't about pride.
No. It wasn't a sinful fall from grace born of petty pride. It's described as a declaration of liberty. It was a principled protest against a celestial ruler who demanded blind allegiance.
And you see that exact dynamic play out in the Gnostic version of the Garden of Eden?
Yes.
In the text, that hypostasis of the archons, the serpent in the garden, is not the villain. The text explicitly calls the serpent an instructor.
Right.
It wasn't trying to damn Adam and Eve by tricking them into eating the apple. It was offering them gnosis, which means true experiential knowledge.
Because the demiurge wanted humanity kept dumb, naked, and obedient in a walled garden.
Right.
The serpent wanted their eyes opened. This concept was so powerful that there are actually early esoteric sects known as the Ophites, taking their name from the Greek word for snake, who explicitly revered the serpent as the true hero of the Eden story.
Just for trying to liberate human consciousness.
Exactly.
Wait, hold on. Let me jump in here.
Okay.
Because the Reddit sources point out a massive glaring omission in the show's universe. Jesus is completely absent from the television show.
He is.
He simply doesn't exist in their continuity. So if Lucifer and Jesus share the exact same light-bringer archetype in these ancient texts, does that mean the show is essentially making the devil its Christ figure?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is precisely the theological subtext of the narrative.
Wow.
Scholars refer to this as Luciferian Gnosticism. The Lightbringer acts as an undercover agent, actively sabotaging the demiurge's rigid system from the inside out to liberate humanity.
So by removing Jesus.
By removing the historical figure of Jesus, the writers allow Lucifer to carry the full weight of the Redeemer archetype. He becomes the sole figure advocating for free will, urging humans to think critically rather than passively trusting in Dad's mysterious plan.
With this radical redefinition of good and evil, it completely flips the concept of cosmic punishment.
It really does.
If God is the warden and Lucifer is the whistleblower trying to hand us the keys, what happens to the people who fail to wake up? How does the show handle the concept of damnation?
It reinvents it entirely by stripping away the medieval imagery. There are no lakes of fire, no pitchforks, no demons torturing human souls for eternity.
Right. Instead, humans are trapped in psychological hell loops.
Yes.
When someone dies and goes to hell in the show, they just relive the moment of their greatest regret or deepest trauma over and over again. But the massive twist, the detail that changes the entire philosophy of the show, is that the doors to their cells are unlocked.
They're completely unlocked. There are no locks, no guards keeping them inside.
Humans are kept in hell entirely by their own guilt. If they can truly, genuinely forgive themselves, they can literally just push the door open and walk out.
And this maps flawlessly onto the Gnostic concept of the archonic trap.
The archonic trap.
Yeah. In Gnosticism, the material world is managed by the archon's lower rulers or spiritual bureaucrats who serve the demiurge.
Oh.
The archons don't keep human souls imprisoned with physical chains. That would be too simple. They keep us trapped through emotional density. They weigh the soul down with ignorance, shame, fear, and societal conditioning so that the divine spark inside us forgets its true origin in the pleroma.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Hell in this universe isn't a dungeon. It's a self-hosted escape room.
Yes.
It's a psychological prison where you are your own warden, you built the walls out of your own trauma, and you completely forgot that you put the key in your own pocket the entire time.
It fundamentally rewrites the concept of salvation, or soteriology.
How so?
Well, in Orthodox religious traditions, salvation almost always requires external intervention. You need a savior to pull you out, or a blood sacrifice to pay your debt, or you need to pledge blind faith to a dogma.
Right.
But in the show, and in Gnosticism, salvation is an entirely internal mechanism. You save yourself through gnosis, through profound self-knowledge.
So you walk yourself out.
Exactly. You walk yourself out of hell by shedding your ego, releasing your guilt, and waking up to the reality that you hold the power.
But the mechanics of that are incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are trapped in a loop of your own psychological trauma, how do you actually find that key?
Right.
How do you forgive yourself when you're your own worst critic?
This raises an important question about the narrative structure of the show itself. Escaping the archonic trap of your own mind requires grueling, often painful self-reflection. You have to dismantle your own ego.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the psychological engine of the entire series, why the devil spends 6 seasons in therapy.
Yes. Lucifer's relationship with his human therapist, Dr. Linda Martin, is not just a quirky comedy subplot to break up the police work.
Not at all.
It is the central driving arc of the story. The show operates on the esoteric principle of as above, so below. The celestial reflects the human. If the devil is dealing with daddy issues, intense narcissism, and a massive victim complex, he has to sit on a couch, pay an hourly rate, and talk it out just like anyone else.
And this is where the source material brings in the work of Carl Jung, specifically his provocative book, Answer to Job.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Jung analyzed the Old Testament God, Yahweh, who, again, mirrors our Gnostic demiurge, and argued that Yahweh suffered from a severe case of divine unconsciousness.
Wait, what does that mean in practice? Divine unconsciousness.
It means he was all-powerful, but he entirely lacked the capacity for self-reflection. He acted out of jealousy, rage, and pride, demanding sacrifices, flooding the earth, testing Job with horrific torments. But he never paused to question his own motives or recognize his own flaws.
So he was basically throwing cosmic tantrums because he refused to look in the mirror.
Exactly the way a Jungian analyst would describe it. In Jungian psychology, every conscious mind has a shadow.
The dark parts of the psyche.
Right, the repressed, dark, or uncomfortable parts that we refuse to acknowledge. Jung argued that Satan essentially represents the repressed shadow of God. Because God refused to look at his own darkness, it manifested externally as the adversary.
Oh, wow. So when mainstream religion tells you to just, destroy, cast out, or ignore the devil?
You are actively instructed to repress the shadow even further, which only makes it stronger and more destructive.
That makes so much sense.
The sources point out that the show Lucifer is actually a masterclass in what esoteric practitioners call chaos Gnostic Satanism, heavily blended with Jungian shadow work.
Okay.
In these systems, the goal is never to destroy the dark parts of your psyche. You can't kill your shadow.
Because it's fundamentally a part of your own architecture.
The goal is to integrate the shadow. You have to sit with it, understand its origins, accept it, and merge it with the conscious light. When you successfully integrate your shadow, you achieve apotheosis, which is a state of divine oneness and psychological wholeness.
So think about what this means for the overarching story.
Yeah.
By sitting on Dr. Linda's couch week after week, crying, getting angry, facing his own narcissism, and having genuine emotional breakthroughs, Lucifer is literally doing the grueling psychological shadow work that his all-powerful father, the demiurge, cowardly refuses to do.
That is the ultimate implication of the entire narrative arc. The demiurge is static. He sits in heaven, unchanging, convinced of his own flawless perfection, which makes him stagnant.
Right.
But Lucifer descends into the messy, dense, emotional reality of humanity. By seeking therapy, by allowing himself to be vulnerable and to evolve, Lucifer is integrating his shadow. He is slowly becoming more whole and arguably more divine than the God who created him.
It changes how you watch every single episode.
It really does.
You aren't just watching a detective interrogate a suspect. You're watching aspects of the psyche interrogate each other.
It demands that you read the subtext of every interaction. The crime solving is just the external manifestation of the internal psychological investigation.
So to bring all of these sources together, the television show Lucifer is infinitely more than a standard Los Angeles police procedural.
Far more.
It is a meticulously crafted Trojan horse. It's taking ancient Gnostic philosophy, deep Jungian psychoanalysis, and off-white theology, wrapping it all up in a sexy, glossy crime drama, and beaming it straight into mainstream pop culture.
It takes philosophical texts that were actively hunted down and burned for thousands of years, and it broadcasts their core themes of self-liberation and anti-authoritarianism to millions of viewers who just thought they were tuning in for the witty banter.
Right. And the reason this matters, the reason we dove into these sources for you today is because this philosophy challenges us to fundamentally change how we view our place in the universe.
Absolutely.
It challenges us to look inward for truth and knowledge, rather than looking upward for external judgment and permission. It reminds us that our own hell loops of guilt, anxiety, and trauma aren't punishments inflicted upon us by a cruel universe.
No, they're not.
They're cages built by our own minds, and they can only be broken by our own rigorous self-awareness.
We see this echoed in a profound thought from the Urantia papers, which argues that the overarching good resulting from the Lucifer rebellion is more than 1,000 times the sum of all the evil.
Wow.
Without that initial friction, without that terrifying questioning of absolute authority, the universe would remain entirely stagnant. If the show's Lucifer is the ultimate cosmic catalyst, the necessary spark that forces both humanity and the divine to self-reflect and evolve, then rebellion isn't a sin. Rebellion is the required mathematical formula for the evolution of consciousness.
So what does this all mean? The sources lay out a compelling case that the archonic trap isn't just some mystical concept reserved for the afterlife. It describes the emotional density of our waking lives. We are constantly weighed down by societal conditioning, imposter syndrome, and the belief that we need external validation to be worthy. Which leaves you with a question to mull over long after this audio ends.
Yeah.
If our daily reality functions as a hell loop designed to keep us feeling guilty and inadequate, are you currently sitting in an unlocked cell staring at a heavy door, just waiting for someone else's permission to finally get up and walk out? Keep looking for the light, and we'll see you on the next Deep Dive.